My name is Mark Caldwell, 52 years old, and I run a successful real estate business in Palm Beach, Florida. I've spent my life building an empire, ensuring my family never wanted for anything. I thought I had it all: a loving wife, a beautiful son, and a strong bond with my family. But life has a way of showing you who truly cares when everything falls apart. My wife, Jessica Caldwell, 48, interior designer, and I were together for 25 years. We had one son, Ethan Caldwell, who would have been 24 this year. He was my pride and joy, an adventurous soul who loved the ocean more than anything. When he was 18, I bought him a custom-built, 70-foot luxury yacht, something he had always dreamed of. He named it the Horizon. It was his sanctuary, his escape, his second home. Then, 2 years ago, tragedy struck. Ethan got into a terrible boating accident, colliding with another yacht during a storm. He survived, but barely. The crash left him paralyzed from the waist down, confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his short life. The boy who once rode the waves was now trapped in a body that no longer worked the way he wanted it to. I quit working 4 months to care for him, trying everything: therapy, experimental treatments, anything that could help. But depression took hold of him. And the worst part, everyone he loved abandoned him. The betrayal that shattered everything. Jessica, his own mother, couldn't stand to see him like that. She started spending more time away from home, throwing herself into work, going to business trips that lasted longer each time. I should have known what she was really doing, but I was too focused on Ethan. And then there was my sister, Rachel, 44, event planner. She and Ethan had always been close. She was the cool aunt, the one who took him to concerts, let him crash at her place whenever he wanted a break from us. But after the accident, she ghosted him. No calls, no visits. She acted like he didn't exist anymore. Ethan held out hope for months, always saying, "Maybe Aunt Rachel is just busy, Dad. She'll come around." But she never did. And then, 1 year after his accident, Ethan took his own life. The loss wrecked me. I buried my only son knowing that his own family had abandoned him when he needed them most. The pain? Unbearable. But Jessica's betrayal? That was what destroyed me. 2 months after Ethan's funeral, I found out the truth. She wasn't just going on business trips, she was sleeping with another man. And not just any man. Ethan's doctor. How I caught her and the drama that unfolded. It was pure accident how I found out. I went to the hospital to donate money for a spinal injury research fund in Ethan's name. The head of the department personally thanked me and said, "Dr. Marcus Reynolds has been telling us how much Ethan meant to you. He said you two were close." Dr. Marcus Reynolds? That name was too familiar. I checked Jessica's phone that night while she was in the shower. Hundreds of texts, some as far back as a year ago, right after Ethan's accident. Explicit messages, pictures, confessions of love. She was cheating on me while our son was still alive, while he was suffering. I lost it. When she came out of the bathroom, I threw the phone at her. "How long?" My voice was low, dangerous. She stuttered, "Mark, it's not what you think." "How long?" She looked at me like a deer caught in headlights. "Since Ethan's accident." I swear, I almost blacked out from rage. I wanted to scream, to break something, to break him. But instead, I grabbed my wedding ring, yanked it off my finger, and threw it at her feet. "We're done." Jessica fell apart, sobbing, begging. I was lonely. "You were so focused on Ethan that you forgot about me." As if that justified it. As if being neglected while our son was fighting for his life gave her the right to betray me. That night, I packed my bags and left. I filed for divorce the next morning. The divorce was brutal, but I didn't care. I got everything. The house, the cars, the business. The only thing I let her keep, her guilt. I never thought she, or anyone else, could ever sink lower than that. I was wrong. Enter Rachel and her audacity. 1 year after my divorce, I finally started to find some peace. But then, 2 weeks ago, I got a phone call that made my blood boil. "Rachel, hey, big bro. Listen, I have some amazing news. I'm getting married." I hadn't heard from her in over a year. I didn't congratulate her. I waited. I knew there had to be a reason she was calling me out of nowhere. And then she said it. "Rachel, I was thinking, since Ethan's yacht isn't being used anymore, I'd love to have my wedding on it. It's just sitting there, Mark, and it'd be so special." I swear I felt my soul leave my body for a second. This woman, the same one who abandoned my son, the same one who never called, never visited, never even came to his funeral, had the gall to ask me for his yacht. The yacht he loved. The yacht he could never sail again because he died thinking she didn't care. My hand tightened around the phone so hard I thought it would snap. I took a deep breath. "You want Ethan's yacht for your wedding?" Rachel, yes. Oh my God, it would be so beautiful. Just imagine white flowers, a sunset ceremony, everyone celebrating love. Celebrating love? Ethan died believing she didn't love him. I exhaled slowly. Then I asked, where are you right now? Rachel laughed. Why? You gonna surprise me? Oh, I was gonna surprise her all right. I arrived at Rachel's house that evening, the Florida sun dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows that stretched across her perfectly manicured lawn. Her place was always immaculate. She'd married into money herself, to Paul Richardson, 46, investment banker, a man who was as shrewd with his finances as he was with people. As I stood at her front door, I couldn't help but notice the framed family photos through the window, smiling faces, perfect fake-its. It made me sick. Rachel opened the door, her arms already wide, ready to pull me into a hug. Mark, I'm so glad you came. Her voice was syrupy, the kind of sweetness that leaves a bitter aftertaste. I let her embrace me, stiff and cold, and stepped inside. We settled in her pristine living room. I refused her offer for a drink. My jaw clenched as I scanned the room, eyes catching on a picture of Rachel and Ethan from years ago, both laughing as they played in the surf. It was a cruel reminder of what once was. So, I started, keeping my voice even. You want to use Ethan's yacht for your wedding? I didn't phrase it as a question. She beamed, seemingly oblivious to my tone. Yes, it's just perfect, Mark. I know Ethan loved that boat, and I thought it'd be a beautiful way to honor him. Honor him? Now? After ignoring him 4 months while he withered away, I took a slow breath, trying to control the fire in my chest. Rachel, you never visited him after his accident. Not once. You didn't even come to his funeral. Her smile faltered. I was busy, Mark. You know how my business took off. And Paul, he needed me. I cut her off. Paul needed you? Your nephew needed you, Rachel. Your own flesh and blood. She shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting away. Let's not dig up the past. It's too painful. I just want to move forward, you know? Start fresh. Start fresh. The words tasted sour. She was trying to gloss over her guilt, pretending it didn't exist. I couldn't let her get away with it. Did you ever even think about Ethan? About what he went through? Rachel's face hardened. I don't need a lecture from you, Mark. Everyone deals with grief differently. I stared at her, searching for any hint of remorse, but her eyes were flat, indifferent. I changed tactics. What would Paul think about using Ethan's yacht? Her expression shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly. Paul doesn't know yet. I wanted to make sure it was okay with you first. That's when I realized something wasn't right. Rachel was never the sentimental type. There was more to this than just a wedding venue. Why does it have to be the yacht, Rachel? Why not one of those fancy hotels Paul could easily afford? She hesitated, a crack appearing in her composed demeanor. The yacht, it's just so unique, and it's sitting there unused. It seems a waste. I leaned in, my voice dropping. Be honest with me, Rachel. What's really going on? She looked away, her hands fidgeting nervously. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Paul's broke, Mark. He lost everything in a bad investment. We're hanging by a thread. If people find out, it'll ruin us. There it was, the truth. It wasn't about honoring Ethan. It was about appearances, about maintaining that perfect image she'd carefully crafted over the years. The yacht would give the illusion of wealth, of stability, and I was supposed to just hand it over. You think using Ethan's yacht will save face? I couldn't help the bitterness that seeped into my words. Rachel's eyes glistened with tears. I know I messed up, okay? I should have been there for Ethan, and I'll regret that forever. But I need your help, Mark, just this once. I let her words hang in the air, the silence between us thick and suffocating. Her desperation was palpable, but I couldn't just forget what she'd done, or rather, what she hadn't done. Then came the twist I hadn't seen coming. Rachel glanced toward the hallway, as if expecting someone to appear. Her voice dropped even lower. There's something else you should know. I braced myself. Jessica's coming to the wedding. My heart stopped. Jessica? My ex-wife, Jessica? She nodded, her gaze finally meeting mine, filled with something I couldn't quite place, fear, maybe guilt. She and Paul, they've been seeing each other. The world seemed to tilt beneath me. Jessica and Paul? Rachel nodded again, her voice breaking. That's why I need this wedding to be perfect. If I can show everyone that we're still strong, still powerful, maybe I can win him back. My mind raced. Jessica, the woman who destroyed our family, and Paul, my sister's husband. They'd betrayed us both. And now, Rachel was trying to use Ethan's memory, his yacht, to salvage her crumbling life. I felt a dark satisfaction brewing within me. This wasn't just about a yacht anymore. This was about revenge, about exposing the truth. I stood up, forcing a smile. All right, Rachel, let's make this wedding happen. Her face lit up with relief. Thank you, Mark. You don't know how much this means to me. Oh, I knew exactly how much it meant, but she had no idea what was coming next. I left Rachel's house that evening with my mind on fire, every nerve in my body buzzing with a dark thrill. Jessica and Paul, my ex-wife and my sister's husband. The betrayal cut so deep it almost felt unreal. Almost. But this was my life now, one long, cruel joke where the people closest to me twisted the knife the deepest. I should have been angry. I should have been heartbroken. But standing outside Rachel's mansion, staring at the pristine world she desperately wanted to maintain, I felt something else entirely. Satisfaction. Because now, I had all the power. Rachel had given me the perfect opportunity to burn their entire world to the ground. Step 1: Setting the trap. I spent the next few days playing the role of the forgiving, understanding brother. I called Rachel, feigned concern, even asked about the wedding details like I actually cared. Each time, she took the bait. She was too desperate to see the trap closing around her. The guest list is almost final, she gushed over the phone one evening. Oh, and I convinced Paul that using the yacht would be a power move. He loves the idea. I could practically hear the smugness in her voice. I hummed in response. I'm happy to help. Really, Rachel, I think this wedding will be unforgettable. And I meant it, because by the time this wedding was over, no one would ever forget what happened. Step 2: The players in the game. If I was going to execute this properly, I needed all the right people watching. First, I reached out to Jessica. I hadn't spoken to my ex-wife in nearly 4 years, not since she walked out on me and Ethan when he was at his weakest. She had run off with her younger, richer plaything at the time, leaving behind nothing but divorce papers and empty apologies. But I knew her better than anyone. Jessica was vain, status-obsessed, and always chasing the next best thing. So when I called her out of the blue and said, I'd love to talk before Rachel's wedding, maybe clear the air, she jumped at the chance. Hook, line, and sinker. Next, I needed to make sure the truth would be exposed to the right audience. That's where Ethan's best friend, Kyle, 28, journalist, came in. Kyle had been like a second son to me after Ethan's accident. He was one of the only people who never abandoned my boy, unlike Rachel, unlike Jessica, unlike everyone else. And Kyle had a reputation for writing explosive exposes. I called him up. Kyle, how do you feel about exposing some rich, two-faced snakes? His laughter rang through the phone. I thought you'd never ask. Step 3: The wedding bombshell. The days leading up to the wedding were agonizingly slow, but everything was falling into place. The yacht was prepped, decorated in white roses and expensive linens, exactly how Rachel wanted. She and Paul paraded around like royalty, completely unaware that their empire was about to crumble beneath them. Jessica arrived at the dock in a designer dress, her blonde hair pinned up in that effortless, expensive way she always liked. She smiled when she saw me. Mark, it's been a long time. I forced a polite nod, burying the disgust I felt deep down. Let's talk inside. I led her onto the yacht, through the lavishly decorated hall, and into one of the private lounges. She sat, crossing her legs, looking at me expectantly. So, what's this about? She asked, swirling a glass of champagne. I leaned back, watching her closely. I know about you and Paul. Jessica tensed. I smirked. You don't have to lie. Rachel told me everything. She hesitated for a second before sighing dramatically, as if this was all such a burden for her. It's complicated, Mark. I laughed. Oh, I'm sure it is. She shifted in her seat. Look, I didn't plan for this to happen, okay? But Rachel and Paul's marriage was already falling apart. I tilted my head. And you just happened to be there to pick up the pieces? Jessica narrowed her eyes. Why do you care, anyway? You and I have been over 4 years. I gave her a slow, deliberate smile. I don't care that you're with Paul. I care about what happens next. Her brows furrowed. What do you mean? I leaned forward, letting my voice drop. You and Paul deserve each other. But Rachel? She's going to find out the truth today. In front of everyone. Jessica's eyes widened. You wouldn't. I grinned. Oh, sweetheart, you know me better than that. Step 4: The final piece. With Jessica shaken and Kyle ready to document everything, the final step was making sure Rachel would be humiliated in the worst way possible. I made a few last-minute invitations to the wedding. Rachel's biggest business competitors, Paul's former investors, Jessica's old flames, people who would eat up a scandal and spread it like wildfire. By the time the yacht set sail on the wedding day, the stage was set. The cameras were hidden, the microphones were recording, and the truth was locked and loaded. Tonight, the perfect wedding was about to become a spectacle of destruction, and I would be standing in the center of it all, watching them burn. The yacht was a floating masterpiece. Crystal chandeliers glowed over pristine white tables, the scent of fresh roses mixed with the salt of the ocean breeze, and waiters in crisp uniforms floated through the crowd, serving overpriced champagne. Rachel had spared no expense. Guests in designer suits and gowns whispered behind their glasses, admiring the extravagant wedding that was about to unfold. But there was one thing none of them knew. By the time this night ended, Rachel's dream wedding would become her worst nightmare. Setting the stage, I played my part to perfection, mingled with the guests, smiled at the right people, shook hands, kept my posture relaxed and my tone pleasant, like I wasn't about to tear my sister's entire world apart. Rachel floated around like a queen, clutching Paul's arm like a trophy. Her laughter was loud, forced. I wondered if some part of her knew the truth already, if the tension in her shoulders was because she sensed that something wasn't quite right. Jessica was here too. She stood near the edge of the deck, drink in hand, wearing an emerald green dress that hugged her in all the ways I used to admire. She looked nervous. Good. She should be. I caught Kyle's eye from across the deck. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. Everything was in place. The first cut. Rachel had chosen a sunset ceremony, because of course she had. Golden light painted the sky as the officiant took his place near the grand floral arch, signaling the guests to take their seats. Paul stood at the altar, straightening his cufflinks, looking proud, smug. I took a deep breath, then made my move. I stepped forward, raising my glass, and cleared my throat. Before we begin, I just want to say a few words. Rachel turned, startled. She hadn't planned for this. Good. Rachel, I said, turning to face her with a warm, sincere smile. You and I have had our differences, but today, I just want to say, I paused, taking a sip of my drink. You are about to make the biggest mistake of your life. Silence. Rachel blinked. Excuse me, Paul frowned. Mark, what the hell are you doing? I ignored him, my gaze locked on my sister. I just think, I said casually, that before you marry Paul, you should know about all the nights he's spent screwing my ex-wife. The reaction was instant. The guests gasped. A champagne glass shattered somewhere. Rachel's expression twisted from confusion to horror as my words sank in. What? She whispered. I gestured toward Jessica, who was now frozen in place, her face drained of all color. Go ahead, Jess, I said. Tell her how long you and Paul have been sneaking around behind her back. Paul's face turned an ugly shade of red. Mark, shut your damn mouth. Kyle, my favorite person in the world right now, chose that moment to step forward, holding up his phone. I wouldn't deny it, Paul, Kyle said, voice dripping with amusement. Because I have proof. With a single tap on his screen, a video started playing on the yacht's massive projector. The video that broke everything. The footage was clear as day. Paul, Jessica, in a hotel room, her in a silk robe, impressing her up against the bed, his voice dripping with affection. I love you, baby, Paul's voice rang through the speakers. Rachel doesn't mean anything to me. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Rachel staggered back like she had been slapped. Paul lunged for Kyle. Turn that off. Too late. The damage was done. Rachel snaps. Rachel turned to Paul, her entire body shaking. You cheated on me? Paul raised his hands. Baby, listen. Slap. Rachel's hand cracked across his face so hard that half the guests flinched. Paul stumbled back, eyes wild. You crazy bitch. Rachel didn't care. She turned on Jessica next. And you? Rachel hissed, storming toward my ex-wife. You absolute whore. Jessica had the audacity to hold up her hands like she was innocent. Rachel, it wasn't like that. Rachel grabbed an entire glass of champagne and threw it directly in Jessica's face. Jessica shrieked as the liquid drenched her hair, her makeup melting in streaks down her cheeks. The guests were eating this up. Some of them had already pulled out their phones, recording every second of Rachel's public humiliation. Kyle, bless his heart, was live streaming. Paul finally lost it. He turned on Rachel, rage twisting his face. You think you're so perfect. You act like you're a queen, but you're nothing but a spoiled brat. Rachel's eyes flashed. You were perfectly happy with my money, weren't you? Paul scoffed. I never loved you, not once. I was using you for your wealth, and guess what? It was easy. The second those words left his mouth, Rachel's fury turned into something else. Cold, calculating destruction. I knew that look. I had seen it before, and I knew exactly what was about to happen. The final blow. Rachel turned to the yacht's captain, who had been watching the drama unfold from the sidelines. Captain. Her voice was eerily calm. Turn the yacht around. The captain blinked. Miss Blackwood, the wedding isn't. Turn it around. He hesitated, but then he saw her expression, and he obeyed. The yacht shifted course. Paul looked around, confused. What the hell are you doing? Rachel smiled, slow and wicked. You're getting off my damn boat. Paul's face twisted. Like hell I am. Rachel only lifted her hand, and within seconds, 2 security guards grabbed Paul and Jessica by the arms. Paul struggled. Let me go, you psychos. Jessica screeched. Rachel, wait. Don't do this. Rachel only laughed. You should have thought about that before you spread your legs for my husband, Jess. And then, without another word, Rachel had them both thrown overboard. Screams and salt water. The splash echoed through the night. Jessica surfaced first, gasping, shrieking. You bitch. Paul flailed in the water, sputtering curses. Rachel leaned over the railing, watching them with the most satisfied smile I had ever seen. Enjoy the swim, darlings. And just like that, the yacht sailed away, leaving them stranded in the middle of the ocean. The guests, they fucking cheered. And me, I just sat back, sipped my champagne, and smiled. The video of Paul and Jessica's humiliation on the yacht went viral overnight. Not just in our city, everywhere. It spread like wildfire across social media, appearing on wedding disaster pages, reaction channels, and even a few gossip websites. The title? Bride publicly exposes groom and bridesmaid for affair, then throws them overboard. Comments poured in. This is the best wedding I've ever seen. That groom deserved worse. Rachel is my new queen. Wait, the Exodus band helped expose them? Iconic. Rachel went from being the Blackwood princess to an internet legend. Paul and Jessica? Well, they didn't take it so well, drowning in consequences. Paul wasn't just embarrassed. He was ruined. Turns out, his company didn't appreciate the bad press. His boss saw the video and called him into the office the very next morning. Paul, you do realize we handle high-profile clients, correct? Paul shifted in his seat. Yes, but, his boss sighed, rubbing his temples. And you do realize that no high-profile client wants to work with a man who got publicly exposed as a cheating gold digger, correct? Paul paled. Wait, you're fired. Just like that, his cushy 6-figure job evaporated. Jessica? She didn't fare much better. Her company, a prestigious PR firm, was not amused by the scandal. Her boss sent her an email the morning after the wedding. Subject: termination of employment. Jessica, after recent events, we believe your personal decisions have negatively impacted the company's reputation. Effective immediately, your employment is terminated. Jessica lost everything. Her job, her friends, her credibility. And Paul? He was stuck jobless, broke, and trapped in a lease for an expensive condo that Rachel had been helping him pay for. Rachel, of course, cut him off instantly. Rachel's new era. Rachel thrived. She wasn't heartbroken. Oh no, she was reborn. She took control of her company, expanded her business, and used the viral attention to launch a new brand. What did she name it? Unfazed by betrayal. And the first product? A luxury yacht rental service. Yes. She turned her cheating scandal into a business opportunity. Marketing slogan? Don't get mad, get even, on a yacht. Brilliant. She even did a TV interview, where she sat in a designer dress, sipping champagne while telling the world, cheating on me was the best thing Paul ever did. He turned me into an icon. Paul was losing his mind. Paul's meltdown. Paul tried everything to repair his image. He went on social media denying everything. He called Rachel, begging her to take him back. He even tried suing me and Kyle for defamation. It didn't work. The court dismissed the case immediately because, well, the video was real. So, what did Paul do next? He turned to Jessica. The breakup from hell. Jessica and Paul lasted 2 weeks. That's it. 2 weeks. It started with bickering about whose fault it was. Then it escalated to screaming matches. Finally, Paul snapped and told Jessica he only used her for sex. Jessica, in turn, threw a full bottle of vodka at his head. Paul had to get stitches. They broke up immediately after. Jessica tried crawling back to me. Mark, I made a mistake. Oh, which one? Cheating or throwing away your entire life for a loser? She cried, begged, even showed up drunk at my house one night, pounding on the door. I simply locked it. A new beginning. As for me, I finally felt free. For the first time in years, I wasn't weighed down by Jessica's betrayal, my sister's selfishness, or the ghosts of my son's past. Instead of sinking into rage and bitterness, I used the money from selling my half of the yacht to travel. I visited places I had always wanted to see. I spent nights staring at the ocean, feeling at peace. My son would have loved this. Rachel and I actually repaired our relationship. She apologized, genuinely apologized, for how she treated me. We weren't perfect, but we were siblings again. And Kyle? He still brings up the yacht wedding every chance he gets. Bro, I still can't believe you and Rachel pulled that off. I grinned. Neither can I. Life was good. And Paul? Well, last I heard, he was living in a dingy studio apartment, working a minimum wage job, and drowning in debt. Jessica? She disappeared from social media entirely. Karma is beautiful. Final thought. If there's one lesson to take from all this, it's simple. Never betray someone who has nothing left to lose, because they will make sure you lose everything. And trust me, watching karma unfold from the front row? Absolutely priceless.